of people rolling in this morning, Donna. I am
Nice.
going to pass it right over to you. I'm going to be back at the end to help you with the Q&A. And for those of you who don't know Donna, she is ITSM Academy's Curriculum Development Manager. She writes all the books. She has all the certs, including her Idol Master. And Donna, very excited to hear what you have to say today, especially as it's a follow-on companion to what Mark Hinkle did for us last month, which was looking at service management through the lens of an AI expert. So now we're going to look at AI and ITSM through the lens of an Idol Master.
and and through the eyes of an educator, I guess, is part of what I want to say about that. So welcome, everybody. I'm the Curriculum Development Manager for ITSM Academy. And part of my role is to always be learning new things and to, then help us as an organization to provide you all with the education that you need to go forward. So that includes things like IDLE and DevOps and process design, specifically in the area of CPD. And I'm going to give you a little sneak peek into the presentation. It does my heart good to see always when we're talking about AI, process design is rising to the top of the list in terms of needed skill. So things like lean and value stream mapping and agile, all of which continue to be relevant today. So let me set the stage a little bit and talk about this notion of creative destruction. And I didn't get a chance to see if Mike Cardinal's out there. Mike and I actually did a presentation last year where we talked about industrial revolutions a little bit. And one of the things we talked about is that throughout history, as we've gone through industrial revolutions, hundreds of millions of jobs have been destroyed. Many more jobs have been created, jobs that we never, were not a glimmer in the eye of the jobs of the people of the jobs who had the jobs that were destroyed. And today, a record number of people are employed across the globes. I think what's a little bit different, and maybe I'll speak for myself in this context. Historically, people didn't necessarily know they were in the throes of an industrial revolution. In other words, it was hindsight. It's kind of like one day people woke up and thought to themselves, good gosh, the world has changed. I personally think today we are very aware that we are in the throes of an industrial revolution. We are very, very aware. And perhaps the pandemic initially brought that on, and now kind of I don't want to say the emergence of AI because it's been around for a long time, but that the explosion of interest in AI that came, especially last year with the emergence of Gen AI, has made us all aware that we're really at this tipping point. We're at this place where all of us, each and every one of us, really needs to be thinking, and I'm talking about in the world, we all really need to be thinking about the impact that technology has had and is having on our lives and will continue to have on our careers as we go forward. So again, historically, we've seen this trend that actually is being proven when we look at the current state of Gen AI, and this is from Deloitte's most recent report, that in the short term, more organizations expect AI to increase headcount 39%, as opposed to decrease headcount 22%. And some of that has to do with the fact that what organizations need right now is Gen AI, AI in general, and data management expertise. The other thing, and I think this point down at the bottom is really important, and as service management professionals, this is kind of our bread and butter, so to speak. Organizations are increasingly prioritizing value creation and demanding tangible results from their Gen AI initiatives. So when it comes to Gen AI, if we talk about things like the hype cycle, we're like sitting at the hype cycle, right? Everybody thinks this is the silver bullet, the next great thing. Well, you know what? You know what happens when we have this much hype around something? Reality is going to settle in. Organizations are going to realize how really, really difficult this is. And, we're going to go through a little bit of disillusion before things start to normalize a little bit. What's really interesting also is that AI in general has been around for a long time. This isn't a new concept, right? It's been around since the 1950s. So AI has actually already gone through a hype cycle and gone through, that kind of disillusion in terms of whether or not it can really reap the benefits. There are still a lot of factory workers in this world. They haven't all been replaced by robots, so there absolutely are organizations out there that looked at, robotization and leveraging AI in the context of kind of manufacturing and plant management, and ended up in some cases being perfectly happy with the human forms of those tasks, or having humans perform those tasks. Also today, what we're facing very much is this challenge of scaling AI within our organizations. There's lots of little pilots going on. There's lots of little experiments going on. Organizations are dabbling here and there, but there's still concern. So how do we address those concerns? Organizations have to look long and hard at their AI strategy. How are they going to leverage AI? How will it enable them to develop products and services? Thinking about their customer base, whether it's their current customer base or, a market that they want to pursue. Thinking about concepts like trust and recognizing that we can really get into trouble with this. And there's already lawsuits flying around, right? We've got data privacy considerations. We've got IP protection considerations. There's a lot that can go wrong. And so, I think that's one of the things that's going to separate the organizations that succeed and survive and thrive this tipping point. They're able to build trust. They're able to show that they're using AI in a responsible and ethical way. Redesigning processes, interjecting AI, automation in general and AI into a process changes the nature of that work. It changes how work flows. So there's a lot that has to happen from a process design and improvement standpoint. And we're using process in a very broad sense here. They could be business processes, they could be service management processes. In most contexts, we're very specific here in IT, and especially in the context of IT service management. But in the real world, so to speak, value streams are viewed as processes, right? Simply put, it's a set of integrated activities that takes inputs and produces outputs. So using process in that very kind of broad term, there's a lot of work to be done in terms of redesigning those processes. Evolving the workforce, which is primarily what we're going to talk about here today. And then certainly data and technology considerations that show themselves in a myriad of ways. So the tipping point is coming. You know, we're at this place in time where, again, I think to be responsible, right? We all have to be aware of where we are at this point in history. We all need to be aware and thinking about the pros and cons of how we move forward with this technological advancement. I am equally fascinated and horrified by AI. And I'm equally fascinated, or I'm equally grateful that I'm in the latter part of my career and envious that I'm not coming up in this day and age, right? With all the opportunity that AI offers. And I'm probably, and throw your comments in chat if you're in a similar place, right? I think I'm not alone in feeling this way. So before I move on, I want to do a quick poll. So here we go, play along. How are you feeling about AI? And this poll mirrors a survey that was done that I'll talk to you a little bit more about. But the idea of the survey is for you personally to think about over the next 20 years how the use of AI will impact you. So do you think that it will help you more than it will hurt you, that it will equally help and hurt, that it will hurt more than help? You're not sure? Or other, feel free to chat in your answer. And I'm not seeing any, oh, okay, 45%. So here's what you all have to say. So 29% help more than hurt. 53, it's a little bit equal. 6% gonna hurt. 9% of you aren't sure. 3% of you other. And, you know, some of what I'm seeing in chat kind of speaks to the fact that you're using it, right, in ways that, you know, don't necessarily have to do with performing your job, you know, summarizing meeting notes, right? That type of kind of activity. All right, thank you. So Pew did some research, and I'm going to hone in specifically on the impact of AI on the IT industry. The Pew Research actually looks in a much broader way at, you know, workers in industries in general. And it actually does a really nice job of kind of laying out, here are the types of industries that are you know, highly exposed to AI and the impact on them. And here are industries that are really not being impacted by AI. So again, honing in specifically on IT, you can see that IT workers, and we mirror the survey a little bit. IT workers are, for the most part, of the opinion that AI is going to help them more than hurt them, even if it's going to hurt them a little bit. So if you look at the statistic here, you know, just shy of 70% of people either think it's going to help them or equally help and hurt, right? So they recognize, right, that it is a help in some areas of what they do. Only 11%, and we were sitting at 6%. So, you know, in our little target audience, the percentage that really think it's going to hurt them in what they do is a relatively small percentage. 20% in this survey said not sure, 9% of us said not sure. So I think this is important because I think, there's a lot of speculation that there's fear out there, but in reality, I think IT professionals in general are coming around to the realization that, like, hey, this isn't going to take my job. This is something that is going to augment my job, and it might change my job in some way, shape, or form, but it's not necessarily going to take my job. And there's like this little mantra that's rolling around out there that, AI isn't necessarily going to take your job, but somebody who understands AI may take your job. So a lot of this depends on the work that's being done. And it's almost, we can look at this on a task by task basis. So in other words, there may not be whole entire jobs or roles within, and again, talking specifically in the context of IT, may not be whole entire roles that get obsoleted for the most part, but there are absolutely tasks that will potentially be obsoleted. So you can look at this in the context, and if you look at, the image on the right-hand side, it talks about the idea that there are some tasks where there's high potential to automate that work, right? Let technology do it for you. High potential to augment that work, right? So let technology help you to do your job more efficiently and effectively. Things that have a lower potential for automation or augmentation, and things that aren't really language oriented, right? There's still, folks who deal with physical hardware and they move that physical hardware around, and that's not necessarily something where AI and large language models are going to change the way we do things. So I think for each of us, we can look at our role that we play and then start to think about the tasks that we're performing today and how they might be affected here. And it's really going to vary. Perhaps an obvious example is customer service representatives. We know that today there's a lot of automation that is enabling, incidents to be logged automatically. We're, able to have requests being logged automatically. AI is augmenting a lot of our activities in terms of things like helping us to categorize incidents and helping us to, search for knowledge bases, to provide chat bots to our customers that provide for self-service. But there are aspects of customer service where the human touch is still critical, that need to provide empathy when someone is, in fact, upset about what's happening in their situation. Another example might be looking at things from the manager perspective. You can see, if you look at general and operations managers as an example, there's a high amount of activity where work is being automated. So, historically, as a manager, you might have had to manually produce reports. You might have had to manually analyze those reports. Today, automation and AI are going to be able to support you in doing that. You're going to be able to have that data analyzed automatically. You're even going to potentially have AI assisting you in interpreting that data or suggesting to you trends, making correlations that maybe you as a human being never could have made simply because you didn't have the time or ability to process all of that data that's required. So your role now as a manager, for example, can change. You can really go from having perhaps a lag in terms of what you're doing, once upon a time, you had to wait for reports to be produced. They landed on your desk. You had to manually analyze them. Today, you're much more apt to have real-time data analysis occurring. You're much more apt to have dashboards available to you that provide real-time data and information. So now what happens? Your mindset shifts, right? You go from reacting to whatever it is that you've discovered to now being having technology support you in being more proactive in your efforts and moving even to more of a predictive way of working. Things that, again, took time in terms of, analyzing capacity and resource and thinking about resource allocation, now can be done automatically. Scalability, right, in this day and age is something we're able to do much more dynamically. So, just examples of where our roles are changing, and it's going to depend on the nature of the task that we're performing, how those roles are going to change. And I'm just going to pause for one tiny second because I'm seeing chats come in, and I just want to glance at them, and some of them we need to talk about, right? So excellent. All right. So organizations need to rethink their talent strategies. They're already, in the IT industry in particular, was already a talent shortage going on. And that's just going to be exacerbated, right, in the coming years. You can see, according to Deloitte's survey, 75% of IT and line of business leaders anticipate changing their strategies within the next 2 years because of Gen AI. Again, we go back to 2023, it kind of seemingly exploded on the scene. But I think the scary part of this survey is that less than 1 in 5 say they're already changing their approach to hiring and training, right? So now we're behind the curve, right? Now all of a sudden, organizations are potentially facing a situation where the truly talented people, or the people that have had the foresight, right, to develop the skills that are emerging as necessary, are going to be in high demand. They're going to be able to potentially name their price, or they're going to be able to potentially go wherever it is that they want to go. So what organizations are faced with is the need to develop a dual strategy. And that is training their current employees to work with AI and complement that with AI technicians that they're bringing in from the outside, people who already have developed or have started to develop the skills that are needed today. So you can see that today's talent strategies need to think about both upskilling, in other words, helping people be able to develop the skills that let them do their current job more effectively, and reskilling, preparing people for new roles that are going to be emerging in our organizations. And again, it does my heart good to see that Deloitte specifically called out the fact that a big impact is the need for people with process engineering skills, process design skills, 48%, right? And again, because this is so much, everything we just talked about, how automation and augmentation is going to change the nature of the tasks that we do, is going to require us to redesign our processes. So this dual approach really does acknowledge the fact that outside expertise is awesome, but it doesn't matter how much of a subject matter expert someone is if they don't understand your business, the industry you're in, the competitive advantages that you're facing. And that's something that your current employees do, in fact, have. If, as a leader, right, that's something that you've been communicating effectively. So I talked about a little bit about the distinction between upskilling and reskilling. So what does that look like? Either approach really requires you to do just initial skills assessment, right? Looking at our strategy, what are the skills that are needed, figuring out the gaps relative to the existing skills that we have within our organization, developing education strategies, and equally important, developing those retention strategies that are going to result in people, upon getting education, staying within your organization and applying those skills, applying what they've learned to the benefit of your organization, and not necessarily packing them up and taking them off to the next new job where they can potentially make a higher salary. So organizations have to think long and hard about this. And remember that reskilling is really about preparing workers for new roles. And I love on the right-hand side, the World Economic Forum kind of put forth what is, I think, a really nice little succinct way of talking about what are the jobs that are going to be created as a result of AI. And those include trainers, right? So these are all, and this is not trainers like me, educators. These are the engineers and the scientists who are training models and who really understand. And I'm going to put in like a little early plug. Later this year, we're introducing a new AIOps foundation class. And in it, we really talk about this notion of models and training those models and the different methods that you can use to train models. You have explainers, people that are going to make it easy to really understand and interact with AI. So these are the people who are designing interfaces, who are the experienced designers, and the folks who are applying skills like design thinking skills in order to really understand, like, okay, how can we make it so that people can interact with AI in a way that is seamless and that is user friendly. And then you have sustainers, the people, if you think about what's under AI, and that is large language models, who is taking care of those large language models? And that's where the sustainers come into play. These are people who are content creators, who are the data curators, who are the people that really understand ethics and governance. A big fear with AI is the potential biases that can emerge, and that will be, in the end, what erodes the trust that we have in these systems. And so we need people, right, who are overseeing things from an ethics and governance standpoint. Right? So let's start thinking about, and each of us can be thinking about, all right, do we need upskilling? Do we just need to acquire some new skills in order to do our current job better? Do we need to prepare for a new role, or do we want to prepare for a new role within our organization? And then what are the skills that we need to do that? Before we move on to that, one of the kind of last points I want to make here is that in many organizations today, you have dual operating models in flight. You may have a legacy, a part of your organization that is maintaining your legacy business and systems. I like to say keeping the trains, running on time, so to speak. So if you're in retail, this is a side of your business that's keeping the stores open and taking care of all the store systems. But if you're in retail today, you sure as heck, I don't even want to say should be moving to, should have already moved to the web and should have already started to develop a presence on the web. So now you have this innovative side of your business that represents, perhaps the future of your business. There may be a day when those stores go away and your organization exists entirely on the web. And what does that look like? And how can you be innovative in that particular space? So your opportunity for new roles may actually exist within your own organization, but under a different operating model, right? You perhaps have historically worked on the legacy side of the business, and now you are looking to position yourself in a different part of the organization, that more innovative side of the organization. So what are the critical skills that we need to develop? And I'm going to talk about them categorically. We need business skills, we need technical skills, and we need human skills. And these are things we've historically referred to as soft skills or self-management skills. And keep in mind that in all likelihood, you need to see all of the above in some way, shape, or form, depending on the role that you play within your organization. I'm going to lead with human skills simply because they are pervasive, right? They apply to everything else we do. And I'm sure, I have no doubt, you're all going to sit out there and say, but what about, right? So, know that in all likelihood, something has been missed and probably something obvious has been missed. But let's talk about the big picture stuff. So first of all, if you think about skills as what you can do, and very often it's thought of in the context of what you can do well, right? What you have an aptitude for. Science and mathematics obviously comes into play here. And I love that on a personal level, I love that increasingly we are really starting to understand the importance of making sure that little girls, we're nurturing little girls who are interested in science and math just as much as we are little boys. This is something that historically, right, there was a lack of diversity there, but we have to, in this day and age, we certainly have to be thinking about things from a diversity and equity and inclusion standpoint. You need analytical skills, and that can involve things like critical thinking, data and information analysis, the ability to do research, problem solving skills. And I think what's always important to understand is that all of these are skills that we can hone. So it's something that if there is a willingness there, you can develop, and you can even either develop it on your own, or there are plenty of classes out there that can help you along the way. Critical thinking, I think that it is something that is so important, and I've already seen in the chat, so I want to comment on it. That some of you are saying, I'm an educator, and we're already seeing, students, plagiarism is pervasive. We're seeing students who are using ChatGPT in order to develop their papers, or, people in the workforce are using Chat GPT in order to develop presentations. And, to some extent, that's okay, right? There is a little bit of this notion that leveraging, Chat GPT is cheating. Well, really, it's not. Historically, we've done research, right? Research just took us a long time to do. Once upon a time, we sat down and we read books, or once upon a time, we sat down and we read papers. We went to the library. I still do go to the library, but that's me. And it took a long time. So what ChatGPT lets us do is do all of that, but much, much more quickly, right? Because it's just the nature of computing technology and these large language models. Where critical thinking comes into play is, are you actually looking at what ChatGPT produced? Are you actually putting it into the context of whatever task you've been challenged to perform? Are you in fact questioning the validity of what information ChatGPT is giving you? And I want to give you it's a simplistic example, but it was part of my personal education process. I was developing a presentation. I wanted some quotes from industry leaders. I wanted the quotes to come from, people of different ethnic backgrounds, people, I wanted a diverse set of quotes, right? And I asked ChatGPT for some examples of some quotes, and it came out with some awesome quotes. They were amazing. I loved them. And then I started asking it to give me the attribution for that particular quote. Give me exactly which paper in that quote was used, exactly what book in which that quote was used. And what it eventually came back to me and said was basically, these are just quotes that were formulated based on, the collection of information, the body of information that's out there from these particular people. So it made up quotes. And had I not challenged it to tell me what the attributions were, right, I would have happily gone on producing my presentation and kind of used those quotes, and then, somewhere along the line, potentially been called out for improperly quoting somebody. So I get it. I get everything you all are commenting on. And here's where I think we as educators need to make sure that we are helping people understand the importance of critical thinking and applying critical thinking to how we're interacting with AI. So just to wrap up skills, listening skills, communication skills, and that includes writing, presentation, and storytelling skills. And, I'm an author, and, if you look at articles about what skills are going to be obsoleted, writing is one of them, right? But here's the reality. ChatGPT can come close to simulating my voice, but it's not my voice. It doesn't necessarily fully always appreciate and understand the intention, the emphasis that I want to place with whatever it is that I'm writing. It can't tell a story the way I can tell a story, right? Because I bring into it my experience and my background. And that's where presentations and storytelling come into play as well. And I think one of the things that's cool about this is that people that have historically not liked producing presentations, but we really need them to, right? Because we need them to tell the story. We need them to explain, right, whatever situation is going on, or we need them to potentially tell the story of what this data is telling us. AI is going to be able to help them, right, to kind of provide the basic framework. They don't have to start with a clean sheet of paper. They can let AI even think about it in the context of knowledge articles. A lot of times, some of you have commented about knowledge management. And how often do we struggle with getting our subject matter experts to produce knowledge articles? Well, we do have the ability now to kind of, attach a vacuum cleaner hose to their head, so to speak, or to their fingertips, so to speak, and let ChatGPT help them to formulate that knowledge article. Again, they don't have to necessarily start with that clean sheet of paper. Leadership skills certainly come into play here, and all of us can be leaders. We can be transformational leaders in terms of helping people in the organization understand what our business goals are and how AI can support those goals. We can be traditional transactional leaders, building teams and helping to build relationships and, removing the obstacles that stand in the way of people getting their jobs done. We can be servant leaders, right? And helping people to develop their capabilities. And then over here we have traits. And when I was formulating this list, I felt like I kind of had to come up with and can jump, buildings in a single bound. But I really want to focus on, first of all, emotional intelligence, because what it does is say, just be aware of where you are in terms of all these other traits and really start to think about, how you can become more open-minded, or how you can become more curious and playful and play with this technology and experiment with it. How you can be more of a lifelong learner. And that just might involve engaging more with your kids and learning alongside of them. So really you can begin there, and also honing those empathy skills, because that at the end of the day is something that AI still can't do, right? It can't take on that human characteristic of empathy. So what are the business skills? And domain-specific knowledge, again, kind of speaks to, do you know what your company does? Do you really fully understand what industry you're in? Do you understand what's happening to the industry you're in? Now more than ever, IT professionals really need to tap into what that looks like. And you can see kind of down at the bottom, a much needed and really phenomenal combination of skills is the people who have the technical skills and that domain specific knowledge, right? And what's really cool is that you could really prolong your career. And some of you out there, I know this is what you've done by moving, spending time in one industry, learning what you can about that industry, maybe working for a couple of different companies within that industry, and then moving on to a new industry. And understanding that you can kind of always carry what you learn forward. A lot of times, the way organizations really have breakthrough performance is that they kind of look at a different industry and realize, oh, okay, we can kind of apply what they're doing to what we do. Leadership, business analysis, strategic and tactical planning, right? So we have some people within our organization who are producing that vision, who are developing that longer term strategy. And then we need people who can take that strategy and break it down, right? Turn it into plans, turn it into shorter term plans that figure out how do we execute on that strategy. I mentioned again, process engineering, and think of process engineering in a very broad sense. I'm not talking about service management only. I'm talking about business process engineering, IT process engineering, service management process engineering. The people side of things, right? Organizational change and the ability to lead organizational change. And experimentation and learning is so much a critical part of this, that proficiency in formulating hypotheses and in conducting experiments is really critical. And being able to really talk about and change the narrative within our organizations in terms of how we approach making improvements. You know, for a long time, the idea was we develop a project plan, we know step by step, here's what we're going to do, we're going to be done, and it's going to be successful. That's not the way we roll today, right? We have to be thinking and we have to be saying, let's conduct an experiment, right? Here's our hypothesis, let's prove or disprove our hypothesis. Either way is good because we're going to be able to learn. So depending on, and here's where risk management a little bit comes into play, depending on the risk profile, the risk tolerance within your organization, you may need to shift, right? And have that ability to shift the way we view things like failure and the way we view things like risk. Certainly AI ethics and policy development is critical. And part of that is really understanding the pure legal and regulatory requirements that, oh, by the way, are going to change daily as we go forward. As those lawsuits come in, we're going to really start to see the laws change. And what's going to be challenging is that if you work in a global enterprise, the laws in one part of the world may be different. They already are, right? May be different than they are in another part of the world. And then we have data management, and I'm talking here about it more kind of from the strategic standpoint. And this is really understanding kind of the intellectual property of your particular organization, of, you know, understanding, you know, what data you own, what data you need to protect, you know, really looking at how it is being used and when it is going to be destroyed. And I'm not talking about that from the technological standpoint here. I'm talking about it really, again, more from just understanding it from the IP perspective. And also the ability to make data-driven decisions. And this is something that, you know, there are a lot of managers who have come up through the years who we, you know, and they learn in school, trust your intuition, and, you know, how to make gut-based decisions. Today, we really need to be making data-driven decisions. Now, that means that we can trust the data, but it is a bit of a mindset shift for some business leaders. Technical skills obviously begin with, you know, knowledge of AI technologies and enablers, and you can kind of see those on the right-hand side. Here we see data management come into play again, and now it's from the technological standpoint, right? So data engineering, data visualization, the ability to kind of present that data in a meaningful way, that ability to present the data in a way that lets the storytellers of the world actually leverage it in order to understand what's going on and then use that data in order to make decisions. Prompt engineering, and I kind of called out this one, you know, a little bit separately because it does come into play with, you know, kind of understanding machine learning techniques and NLP techniques. But I called it out specifically because it's one of those things that is going to have a little bit of a shelf life, right? We do prompt engineering today, and we have done it for years. We just tend to call it Googling around, right? And some of us are really good at it, and some of us aren't. My brother can never find anything on the internet ever. And he like never quite understands where I do one quick little search and I give him exactly what he's looking for, right? So in some respects, that's a little bit of prompt engineering, right? It's really about understanding how to design the inputs that we use in order to get the outputs that we want from these large language models. Now, when we talk about it in the context of machine learning and AI, it's much more sophisticated and requires, you know, much greater care, and because we absolutely can influence and we will influence the results that we get back. So it is a skill that is very relevant today. And I think it's one of those skills that when we talk about AI fluency and basic AI literacy type education, prompt engineering can come into play at different levels, right? It can be, providing administrative staff the ability to understand, how to engineer prompts in relation to their role versus the people who are working in IT and working with machine learning models. Speaking of models, proficiency in those modeling techniques, statistical analysis, and leveraging real-time data. Now, again, this is task specific, right? But if you actually look at these different areas, they are likely areas that you are already, there's skills that you're already developing in some way, shape, or form in your role. And now your opportunity is to really understand what you're doing in the context of AI. In terms of technical skills, part of reskilling technical professionals for AI is really bringing into play those human skills. Because, for example, we need people to be applying critical thinking. We can't just blindly trust whatever information, right, is being produced by these models. We need to have people who can understand when we've put in place automation or we have AI performing part of a process, and the process actually got worse, right? We've actually made life more difficult for either the humans who are doing the work or for the customers who are the recipients of our work, who have the empathy, right, for that particular experience. So when we talk about emerging roles in the context of AI, and I've given you a laundry list of the different types of roles you might see, but if you actually look at these roles, they really span the entire life cycle, and they really represent all aspects of our profession. People who are designing things, people are developing things, people who are supporting things, people who are using things. And then, as always, the people who are in oversight roles in terms of things like ethics and governance. So again, some of these roles exist in our organizations today, but they're evolving in the context of AI. So what's the best way to AI-proof your IT career? It's just keep learning, right? In whatever way, shape, or form you can, taking classes, self-studying, researching best practices, taking on projects or taking on leadership roles, and really challenge yourself. We learn through failure, and I think we have to just learn to embrace that notion that if you try something and you're not good at it, you're going to learn something from that, and that's okay. And this is, I think, especially for people who are in the younger parts of their careers, where you have so much opportunity to learn. Hone your critical thinking and analytical skills, because they are critical. They are what are the difference between you relying on AI and letting it make a fool of you, and you don't even necessarily know better, or really challenging, right, the results that AI is providing to you, the information that AI is providing to you, and thinking about it in an ethical and responsible way. Follow experts in the field. We have LinkedIn today. We have Twitter. We have a lot of mechanisms that we can use that really enable us to get in touch with the experts in this particular field, that enable us to kind of reach out to people and say, would you be willing to mentor me? Can I shadow you? In the restaurant industry, there's a notion of stage, right? You go knock on the back door of a restaurant and you offer to work for free in order to learn from the chef. we can apply that the same concept. And I know it's hard to think I'm going to work for free, but maybe this is an opportunity for us to really hone our skills. So last but not least, we need to develop an effective education strategy. And this is something that is important because according to PwC, the skills that employers need are changing at a 25% higher rate than they ever have before. So we're going to have to constantly align our education strategies with our strategic goals. We're going to have to constantly think about different levels of education. And thank you very much, Lisa. I'm going to go ahead and start the poll. You know, what's the basic education that people need? What's the foundational level knowledge that people need in order to understand terms and concepts? What's the practitioner level knowledge that people need depending on their role? And then tailor learner journeys in such a way that people can develop the business, technical, and human skills that they need. So with all of that, let me hand it over to Lisa, because I'd like her to talk about education strategies and some of the things that we're doing here at ITSM Academy.
Thanks, Donna. And I also put in, we have just a few minutes left for the Q&A. We put a poll up. We do have education strategy services available, which that made it sound like a sales thing. That's not what we meant by that. But I'll put a link into just because time, I'm going to put a link into a blog that we wrote about education strategy planning with some tips and tricks and ideas that we think could be very helpful to you. And some of the chat today was amazing. So what I did was I asked ChatGPT to give us some answers to the questions that we're particularly around education, high school education. Anyway, I'm going to attach that document in just 1 second. And you guys will have that. We'll also include that in the follow-up email because it gave me some, as always, I call her Gwen. She's been really good to me and has helped me a lot. So, I think it's interesting that so many of us in our profession, when we think of AI, a lot of people only think of ChatGPT, and obviously it is so much more and greater than that. But I think to Donna's point, getting a handle on the amazing things that chat can do for you to enhance and speed up things you already know how to do, and give you ideas. And brainstorming is one of the things that I really love the most about chat. So we're at time. I'm going to do the commercial. Donna's going to stay on for any Q&A. Looks like we're going to take July off webinar just because vacations, etc. So we'll be back in August on August 15th. It's always the third Thursday of the month. If any of this spurred some ideas, if you would like to co-create a presentation with us, for us, what folks really are always very interested in are practitioners. Every one of you has a story. As Donna talked about today, that's a great way to AI-proof your career, is to get your presentation skills rolling. And Donna and I are here to help you do that. So if you are interested in, presenting a webinar on really any topic around service management, we're here to help. Thank you very much. And again, August 15th is when we'll officially be back. And if you have to go, thank you very much for spending time with us. And let's now open it up to Q&A.
And otherwise, Lisa, let's talk about, AI Ops Foundation and some of the other classes that we've got going on just before we kind of lose folks altogether.
I am so glad you said that. We are, for today's attendees, I am putting in the chat right now the link to the AI Ops Foundation class. Even if you're not interested in joining right away, I think it's worth your time to review and look at what it covers. It's a course that comes out of the DevOps Institute. It has become the industry standard. And we are offering a 10% off discount, which is, I'm also typing that. It is, I believe, and Nina, if I did that wrong, please correct me. But anyway, 10% promo code. Thank you, Nina. to join that class if you would like to. I know I'm very excited about it. I'll be attending the class myself.
And what I want to say is it's a foundation level class. And so while AI ops is very specific and we tend to think about it from a platform perspective, especially those of us who work in IT, it really lays a good foundation in terms of introducing AI terms and AI concepts, and different modeling techniques, and we talk about implementation strategies. And so it really has kind of a very, very broad appeal for somebody who's really just looking to understand, AI in general and what it looks like. So I learned a lot by just standing it up and getting ready to roll it out. I learned a lot.
So, and I also threw up, we're doing a key concepts of IT service management class in our public classroom in July. And we've decided, class is already a go. So we've decided we're going to raffle off a few seats for the attendees today. So if you'd like to get in the raffle, go ahead and just throw your name and email in there. And we'll be doing the raffle before the end of the day today. And it doesn't look like, Donna, we have any questions. Are you scrolling through chat as well?
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of the comments I love, because here's the concern of it all, right? Is that how do we, encourage critical thinking, and how do we make sure that people aren't just, kind of letting AI do their work for them. And I think that's partly a leadership opportunity, that we need to make sure that leaders understand that whole trust conversation, and that we, really have, there's opportunity for things to go horribly wrong if we're not applying a healthy dose of skepticism here. And the trust but verify philosophy of life. So putting in place the guardrails that will help do that. And the answer isn't just tell people they can't use it, because what happens when you tell people they can't do something? It makes them want to do it even more. And we're already hearing the phrase shadow AI rolling around. So organizations are better off developing a strategy and providing education that can help. And I think this is one of those situations too, where we all kind of hate the phrase role playing per se. But things like simulations, where you actually create, and especially for leadership, we create situations where AI tries to send us in the wrong direction. And then how do we apply the critical thinking to understand, right, that this data isn't trustworthy, or to understand that if we do in fact take this direction, we might be making things worse rather than better. And simulation tools are really starting to come out. Process simulation tools, for example, are starting to come out that let you understand, right, if you are making certain changes to workflow, or if you make certain changes to data, you can simulate what that looks like in terms of flow, and what it looks like in terms of impacting your ability to deliver value. And so those types of guardrails are I think going to continue to evolve. The other question, and I was trying to find the actual question, but there was a question about how do we know, right? How do we, how would an educator, for example, know that a paper has been plagiarized? There actually is technology available today that educators, for example, can run that paper through that technology and know if the paper has in fact been plagiarized. It kind of comes back and lets them know what percentage of the paper has been plagiarized. And this is also very important when it comes to imaging. And this is a phenomenally important conversation for artists, for example, because now we have AI generated art. So how do you know if the art the photograph that you're looking at was real or if it was generated by AI. So there are initiatives underway, and I unfortunately off the head can't think of one particular organization that's being created to provide a worldwide mechanism for artists to be able to register, for a lack of better word, their art as original art. And so if someone, for example, takes an image and manipulates that image in such a way that is counter to what the artist originally intended, AI will be able to detect that, right? So there are really super smart people out there who are thinking about how do we do this, and you know, that is going to evolve. And probably where I get a little bit scared is when we talk about education strategies. People know they need to change their education strategies, but they haven't yet. We know that we need these technologies to detect plagiarism and image manipulation, but they're not available. Like, that's the part that makes me nervous, because again, things can go horribly wrong in the meantime. But we have to just be confident and positive that they are in fact underway, and it'll all catch up. And I don't think I saw anything else that was really kind of a question per se.
Correct. I haven't
anything
either.
else, Lisa?
Nope. We do have a lot of people still hanging out 9 minutes after the hour. Thank you guys. We always appreciate you.
It's a super, you know, it's, again, it's just, we're living in some really interesting and kind of crazy times, but I think, you know, one of the cool things about the profession we're in is that we're on, you know, I don't know, should we call it the bleeding edge or the leading edge of it, but we're on, you know, we're in front of it. And we just have to understand that it's like any other point in time. You know, I was thinking about this last night. I actually can remember. So one of my very first management roles was standing up the service desk, we called it a hotline, at the company I worked for. And one of our biggest challenges was teaching people how to use a mouse. Contrast that with, I was in the grocery store the other day and I was watching a mother who had her child in the cart. So the kid was so little that it could sit in that little seat in the cart. The kid was phone in hand, and mom said, cross lettuce off the shopping list. And I was like, is that kid even little enough to read? It must have been a really small child that it could sit in the cart. But, you know, the child knew how to use the phone, right? So that's where we are, right? It's kind of, we do have to remember that it's like anything else where some of this stuff is going to seem difficult to us right now. Someday, 20 years from now, people are going to look back at now and say, you know, it seems so easy. Why didn't they understand how to solve all these problems?
It'll be the equivalent of when we watch a movie and someone has a brand new car phone and it's 2 times the, oh, you can't see my water bottle. Yeah. 2 times the size. Just, yeah. You know, that's us today.
It's like fast, yeah. And fast forward, you know, 20 years and it's all going to be different. So.
All right, Donna, as always, we appreciate your time today.
Thanks, friends. Thanks to all the friends and family that attended today. Great seeing everybody.
I don't, a lot of times I've seen the presentation or we've kind of talked through what you were going to do. And because the timing on this one, it was all very fresh. And I really, really enjoyed it, got a lot out of it, got a lot out of the chat. And I think it was interesting what Nina was able to load up that Chat GPT document, which I asked it 3 different questions. I didn't clean it up at all, which is, you know, obviously step 1 normally when you use chat is then you got to go get it in your voice and all the things that we've already talked about. So anyway, I really, really enjoyed today. As always, thank you, my friend, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks all.
Bye all.
Cheers.